So, what are the landmark activities leading to the reform? The reform was initiated in 2011 and sponsored by the World Bank through Nigeria. I will give a chronology of important decisions, events, activities that provided the platform for implementation of the ARCN reform between 2012 and 2016. This is important in order to appreciate the efforts and resources that have been dedicated to this process over a period of 5 years. The first was study tours conducted to Brazil, India, and China, with a comprehensive report produced in 2012. The teams were from ARCN, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the private sector, and these were mainly technical teams. Then there was approval of the reform of ARCN by the NTA in 2013 in Abuja, and then the reform was approved by the governing board of ARCN in 2014 in a retreat in Lagos. There was engagement of IFPRI, local, technical, and legal consultants that led to the production of a reform strategy document, which included a draft ARCN amendment bill that we are considering today. And in that team of the technical consultants, the legal consultant was Mrs. Kainde Ajoni, who was former director of legal drafting in the Ministry of Justice and currently a retired permanent secretary. Then we conducted zonal stakeholders retreats and change management workshops in the various zones. The consultants facilitated these workshops where the strategy document and the proposed reform bill were thoroughly discussed. There was also the validation meeting with various stakeholders, management staff of research institutes, colleges, ARCN, and leadership of the various unions in ARCN headquarters on March 7, 2016, which considered and discussed, among other things, issues that arose from the various retreats. Then there was a meeting of ARCN management with all staff of the ARCN Secretariat, still in March 2016. Then I visited all research institutes and colleges and met with staff of these institutions to enlighten them on the reform process. This was between April and November 2016. And then lastly, there was a study tour to ICA, India, by leadership of the Senate and House Committees of Agriculture, staff of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, and management of ARCN in October 2016. It was felt that after the initial study tours in 2012, the ICA model in India would be more appropriate for us to emulate and adapt to our own peculiar conditions. The current chair of the Senate committee, who was still chair then, and distinguished Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi were part of that team. Identification of key challenges that have been inimical to the effectiveness of ARCN over the years. One, there has always been the wrong impression, and this is important, that the research institutes and colleges are stand-alone parastatals, being coordinated by an agency called ARCN. The multiplicity of governing boards within the system gave rise to this erroneous perception, but the Act is very clear about the structure of the Council. By the provisions therein, ARCN is one organization with a secretariat and the constituent research institutes. Part 3 relating to staff of the Council in Section 6, subsection 3, states that, and I quote, the Executive Secretary shall, subject to the general direction of the Council, be responsible for, among others, 1. The administration of the Secretariat of the Council, and 2. The general direction and control of all other employees of the Council. So ARCN is one single organization with constituent research institutes. Likewise, I have made reference to other several sections of the Act to buttress this point in a previous key presentation I made to the Senate Committee on Agriculture on 27 April 2016, titled Reform of the ARCN. I refer distinguished members of the committee to that document, and I will make it available to them. Secondly, the existing conditions of service of research institutes and allied institutions, as approved by the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation in 2004, that covers all related institutions under several ministries, should be appropriately revised and approved by the ARCN Governing Board. The Act has empowered the Governing Board to perform this function under the second schedule, section 6, subsection 7. This would in future prevent such unfortunate incidences as the case of declassification of ARCN as a research organization by the Office of the Head of Service, an action that seriously destabilized the Council in the last couple of years. The Office of Head of Service justified its action by comparing ARCN with the National Universities Commission in terms of operations as a regulatory body. It is noteworthy that there are fundamental differences between the ARCN and NUC. Now, thirdly, the research institutes and federal colleges of agriculture have literally been converted to general employment centers without regard to any strategic needs analysis. Such exercises are usually conducted without recourse to the Secretariat of ARCN. As soon as intention is declared to employ staff in the institutes and colleges, various interest groups readily provide candidates who often do not have the necessary requisite qualifications and get them imposed on these institutions. The resultant effect is overbloating of the system, leading to the observed appalling 1:7 ratio of researchers to non-researchers, and consequently rendering the system inefficient and ineffective. And the normal ratio globally is about 1:2 or 1:3. 1:7 tells you that we have so many people within the system that are support staff, and that is not going to help research much. As at 2012, the total number of existing staff within the research institutes and colleges was approximately 13,000, with about 10,000 in the research institutes. The proportion of PhD holders among the research staff, numbering about 1,500, was just 20%, compared to the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, which is about 80%. By 2018, the numbers rose to a total of about 16,000 staff and 12,000 in the research institutes. Presently, in Embrapa, Brazil, and ICA, India, the minimum qualification to join these research organizations as technical staff is a PhD. We should therefore strive to do what is right and necessary by repositioning our research system in line with global best practices. Fourthly, the Secretariat of ARCN, which is the headquarters, as currently constituted, is technically weak and so does not have the required capacity to effectively drive the research system. The total staff strength in the headquarters is presently 203, with 82 of them, that is 40%, being in the research cadre, while only 12% of such in the research cadre have PhDs. That is, only 10 people have PhDs. Additionally, only 2 out of the 6 technical departments are headed by PhD holders. Evidently, adequate supervision of the research institutes and colleges would be difficult under these circumstances. Accordingly, the Secretariat needs to be appropriately restructured in line with the reform proposal and also well capacitated. Hence, the Executive Management Team will comprise of the Executive Secretary and the designated Deputy Executive Secretaries. The various institutions of ARCN will then have direct reporting lines to the appropriate Deputy Executive Secretaries. Currently, the Indian Council of Agricultural Research operates a similar structure with a Director General and Deputy Directors General, 8 of them. The ARCN Governing Board is also sufficiently empowered by the existing law to perform such function. Why do we need to reform ARCN? This is just throwing light on the amendment areas of the bill. One, the multiplicity of governing boards in the system has led to high cost of governance, disjointed operations of institutes and colleges, and overbloating of the system, often with unqualified staff. The Oronsai Committee noted this major challenge and recommended the scrapping of the governing boards of institutes and the creation of a single governing board for the entire system. Such an action would provide a platform for centralized governance and decentralized operations. I noted that the Honorable Minister did point out a concern of the Ministry on this, but I will explain why this is important for the research system. The political governing boards of institutes should be replaced by more professional entities, such as management committees or boards, that will comprise of internal management staff and external members to be chaired by the executive directors and provost and appointed by the council. The advantages of such action are: one, harmonization of operations of the constituent institutions, as the mandates of our institutes are highly interconnected. The model being proposed in the bill is the global best practice that is being implemented in countries such as Brazil, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, and Kenya, to mention a few. Suffice it to add that even the CGIR, which is the umbrella body for all the international research centers, is currently undergoing a major reform geared towards having a one common board to govern the entire 15 global international agricultural research centers. I happen to be chairing the board of trustees of one of the centers, and in the last 1 year, we have been preoccupied with this particular activity. Therefore, we cannot afford to have a fragmented agricultural research system. After all, the ICAs, the EMBRAPAs, and the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences effectively manage as many as 110, 47, and 40 research institutes, respectively, under centralized governance system. Two, minimization of administrative and bureaucratic interferences from the Ministry of Agriculture. Very often, the ministry bypasses the council to give directives to research institutes and colleges. The budget office of the ministry usually decides on envelope budget allocations to the ARCN Secretariat and all research institutes and colleges. Such actions are not healthy for the system. Thirdly, timely appointments of chief executive officers of research institutes and colleges have always been a major challenge for ARCN. The ministry consistently delayed appointments of these officers over the years, with negative consequences with regards to effective functioning of these institutions. Such is not likely to happen under a reformed ARCN. Then secondly, currently the colleges are not recognized under the ARCN Act. They are only covered by the subsisting condition of service as approved by the Office of Head of Service, which is just an administrative instrument and not a law. Yet these colleges have boards supervising them. Then the 4 university-based research institutes, namely the National Animal Production Research Institute, NAPRI, Institute of Agricultural Research, IAR, the National Agricultural Extension Research and Licensing Services, NARS, all affiliated to Ahmadu Bello University, and IAR&T, affiliated to Obafemi Awolowo University, are governed by the statutes of their respective universities' laws. Their staff are all staff of the universities, and the appointment of directors is by their vice chancellors, usually done without input from ARCN or the Minister of Agriculture. This needs to be corrected in such a way that the appointment of these directors shall be consultative in line with the process as approved by the Council. What has been happening over the years was that the universities appoint directors without recourse to the ministry, particularly the minister. And the ministry funds these research institutes completely. Their salaries, their funds for research, all come from the ministry. It's just unfair that when the directors will be appointed, that the ministry of ARCN is not consulted. I think this is also part of the amendment bill. Then ARCN should arrest the brain drain from research institutes and colleges to universities by appropriately revising the current condition of service to align with what obtains in the universities. I think this is also part of the bill. And then incorporation of spin-off companies is a veritable vehicle for generation of revenue and motivation of staff. Hitherto, research institutes and FCAs or colleges are discouraged from generating revenue in view of the extant rule regarding such generated funds. The current major challenge of the negative economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic underscores the urgency to explore such laudable initiative. Then, importantly, the need for better and more sustainable funding of research institutes and the colleges. I noted that the minister has questioned this, and honestly speaking, I think we need to revisit this in the context of the bill that was presented. Because if that bill scales through to law, funding for the research system could be channeled through that fund. It is important to consider the gravity of the funding challenges being faced by the research institutes and colleges with regard to conducting core applied research and sufficiently delivering on their various mandates. Averagely, 70% of the total appropriation for the entire system is dedicated to salaries and allowances. Of the balance of 30% allocated to recurrent, 80% is expended on capital, mostly physical capital. On the average, therefore, only about 5% of the total budget is expended on core research activities. Assuming a total of about 20 billion as an average allocation to the system, which was the case a few years ago, the core research component will only get about 1 billion naira. This is negligible, and it explains why we are not making the kind of technological advancement expected of a research system that is adjudged to be the largest in sub-Saharan Africa. And it might interest this gathering to know that the annual budget for Embrapa in Brazil is about $1 billion. The average budget for ICANN in India is about $2 billion. And the average budget for the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences is about $700 million. In fact, coming back home, IITA in Ibadan, the average annual budget for IITA is about $100 million. And we are talking about $50 million for the entire ARCM, composing of the research institutes and the colleges. And even the center that I chair the board of, which is Wallfish, is about the smallest center within the CG system. Their annual budget is about $30 million. So if we want to have results in research, we have to look at how we can fund research effectively. And I believe that that is something that is doable. The fact of the matter is that these institutions have higher absorptive capacities in utilizing appropriations than even the core ministry. This is largely because they have more cost centers, and you only need to visit them to appreciate the level of decay of their infrastructure and facilities. Now, I have proposed an interim solution pending the conclusion of the reform. And the first is the restructuring of the ARCM Secretariat, already covered by the subsisting law. And this should be implemented almost immediately with a specific timeline. This is a key step towards repositioning the research system. The proposal is to set up a ministerial committee on repositioning the Secretariat of ARCM to effectively drive the research system with the following suggestion. Membership, the chair of that committee to be an independent senior scientist or researcher, and then a director from the Ministry of Agriculture, member, the executive secretary member of ARCM, 3 serving or former directors, executive directors of research institutes as members, a serving provost of a college as member, representative of a University of Agriculture as member, and then ARCM will be the secretariat. The terms of reference of the committee as proposed is 1, to provide an appropriate framework for restructuring the Secretariat of the Council in line with IFPRI's final report on the reform of ARCM. 2, to conduct a consultancy-led comprehensive staff audit of the Secretariat of ARCM. Thirdly, to determine the various establishment levels, including existing gaps and the required requisite qualifications for those positions based on structures determined in A. 4, to appropriately review some recent approvals of the governing board of ARCM in relation to the Secretariat staff, such as the designation of staff back to civil service cadre from research officers cadre, and I think with the coming of Professor Abuja, that has been corrected, and then some of the staff promotions. 5thly, to appropriately review the subsisting conditions of service of research institutes and allied institutions and the current salary structure, taking cognizance of the academic nature of the institutions. This is important because all of you in the institutes and colleges know that the condition of service of the research institutes and colleges has been with the Office of Head of Service for several years for review. That has not happened up to And because of that, the institutes, the colleges have been having problems in terms of governing these institutions. And the law of ARCN has empowered the governing board to determine the conditions of service of its staff. So I think it's high time that we withdrew that document from Office of Head of Service and then review the document in line with what the Agri Research System wants. Then to develop annual staff assessment templates along the line of Global Best Practice Performance Management Process, PMP, procedure, in respect of Chief Executive Officers and all staff of institutions under the aegis of ARCN, including the Executive Secretary. And what we don't have in the system, which needs to be there, is that people need to be technically assessed. And if that is not done, then you give room for mediocrity. And if you do it, then you put the staff on their toes, including the CEOs, because they know if they are going to be assessed every year on a well-developed template. And the templates are available. International centers use these templates. Then to advise on the establishment of a platform for multidisciplinary research across the entire national agricultural research system, including funding structure. What came to our mind here is that we used to operate the competitive agricultural research grant scheme, which started when Dr. Ruma was minister. And unfortunately, it stopped. But at that time, we had co-funding for research. And we developed more or less an agricultural research plan in which a lot of the institutes keyed in and other universities and faculties keyed into that program. I think it's good to revisit that. To propose a framework for establishing business units in research institutes and colleges, and an elaborate process for commercialization of products. To develop, in consultation with the National Assembly, an effective template for classifying capital projects in research institutes and colleges as physical, administrative, and program for approval by Budget Office in order to enhance appropriate funding for research and targeted capacity building. This is actually a baby of distinguished Senator Aliyu Sadi Abdullahi. He has been preaching this for many years, that we should look at how we fund the system. Most often, the issues of conferences are considered as overhead expenditure, but conferences are actually part of research. So we should be able to classify the budget in such a way that we separate the physical capital and then the administrative capital, and then the program capital will be geared towards actual core research. With the reform, the chief executive officers of the institutes and colleges will devote more time in governing their institutions rather than spending a lot of time traveling up and down between their stations and Abuja. It is also important to emphasize that for the reform to be successful, the ARCN Secretariat or headquarters must be adequately strengthened with highly qualified staff that have sufficient capacity to effectively drive operations of the institutes and colleges. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development deserves very high commendation for its sustained, unflinching support for the reform. The chairman of the committee in particular has always demonstrated unparalleled passion towards making the reform a reality. It is sincerely hoped that through the reform, the research system will contribute more positively to the diversification of Nigeria's economy, which is the cornerstone of the current administration, through increased productivity and enhanced food security. The question is, do we genuinely and sincerely wish to revamp our agri research system? This is not about us as individuals. It is about the future of our country. The choice is ours. We should remember that today's research is tomorrow's wealth. Thank you.
We, at the level of the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria, consisting of the executive directors and members of the board of the Agricultural Council of Nigeria, met, and we looked at the bill as presented. First of all, let me address just a few of the issues that were raised by the former executive secretary as regards the issue of accreditation. I want to say that the Honorable Minister has already given approval for us to commence the issue of accreditation for all the research institutes through a letter written to the Council. The issue of condition of service has also been concluded and presented before the board in the last board meeting. That has been approved. We are going to forward it to the Federal Ministry, the Establishment Office, the Head of Service, for endorsement and subsequent gazetting by the Ministry. We have also been able to correct one of the issues, and that has to do with the vacancy positions. Before now, the RCN was an evolution from the Department of Science, Agri Sciences, and they were more or less relying on the vacancies that had existed within that. So that also has come up, and the Office of the Head of Service of the Federation has given us approval for established vacancies. Now, going to the substance of the bill, while I appreciate the efforts of the Honourable Minister and the concerns that are raised, I just want to highlight some certain points within that will require correction if eventually this bill comes to fruition. Number one has to do with the choice and qualification of the chairman, which according to the bill has to be an agriculturalist. Our view here is that the chairman must not be an agriculturalist, but must have a general knowledge of agriculture, because the membership of the board has taken care of the subject specialists, where it has specified the existence, the membership representing crops, livestock, and fisheries. In addition, we feel that the chairman, if he is equally committed, will be able to drive the system. However, there is a need for us to specify the qualification for somebody that is going, that somebody to be appointed as the executive secretary. And this has been responsible, sir, for the chains of trouble that the ARCM has undergone for over 3 years. At the end of it, you'll find out that those who are less qualified to handle the ARCM eventually emerge as leaders of the ARCM. And Mr. Chairman, you will recall, at a certain point in time, we were almost denied a budget because of that situation. So we believe that anybody less than a PhD holder not run the system, as it were. We also looked at the issue of, for example, Part 2 of the bill, Section 5, that has to do with the powers of the council. The colleges of agriculture are completely removed because it reads institutes, universities, and other bodies. And we felt that colleges of agriculture should be specifically captured. Another area that we feel this bill will talk about is a correction in Section 19 that, just like the Honourable Minister mentioned, there are 4 research institutes that fall under the confines and status of by the statutes establishing the university. So if that is the case, perhaps we may include under section 19, item number 11, by saying without prejudice to the provisions of this section, the research institutes established by the university's statutes are exempted. This is our submission. Thank you very much.
Mine is a very sober moment, and perhaps even emotional, because I was privileged to be the personal assistant to the Director of Agric Sciences Department from 1996 up to 2006. And the ARCN Act, as it were, was signed on 27th May 1999. And I was privileged as PA then to pursue that degree, because it was military era, with the Ministry of Justice on a continuous basis. So I think that was the beginning of my own sojourn with the subject matter of managing agricultural research in Nigeria. And of course the ARCN as we have it. Of course, by 2006, when the bill or the act then finally got the nod of the presidency to take off, we were in the Agric Sciences Department, and you will recall there were a lot of reforms going on at that time. And I was also privileged to be a member of the Ministerial Reform Committee at that time. And so we said our own interest in the research system was for agri-sciences to metamorphose into ARCN, because we already have an existing legislation. So I would say from 2006, of course, together with Professor Baba Yusuf, we began the journey of trying to position ARCN as the apex research body for the country. And I would say that quite a lot was done. But unfortunately, and perhaps, let me say fate, by 2014, when I had cause to venture into politics and to voluntarily retire from the Agric Research Council of Nigeria to contest in 2015, I know the quantum of work we did. If we were sustained, perhaps we will have a lesser work to do today. But I'm sorry to say, unfortunately, everything we did between 2006 to that 2014 was scuttled and thrown away. And that made the whole issue much more difficult, leading to a situation where we had an admin officer heading Agric Research Council of Nigeria. In fact, Honorable Minister, let me say this. When we're in the ministry, any letter that you see doctor, they will just pack everything and say, take it to Agric Sciences Department, because that is where the doctors are. The ministry is aware that that is their academic arm, so to say. And so we came up through so many mistakes to a situation where the council was left in the hands of, let me use this analogy. When you have a military, and then you decide to hand over the running of your military to maybe young bankers, that's exactly what happened to ARCN. Because you brought in people who you thought knew how to shoot, how to cut, and claim that they are military, and you hand over your war to them. Very unfortunate, that's what happened, Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues. So for me, I remember we were planning to go on the study tour, which, as Providence would have it, I would have attended as a staff of Agric Research Council of Nigeria, because the previous ones, I think, I was involved. But it never happened until I found myself here in 2016 or so, and we have to go to India again. Now, Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues, in the 8th Senate, you remember this bill was before us. And the study tour Professor Abubakar talked about was designed for us to understand, as a benchmark, what we need to do if we want to reposition agriculture And I think having spent so much money in these study stores, it will be a disservice to Nigeria if we say we do not learn anything. I think we learned quite a lot. We choose India because India is similar to Nigeria in its development trajectory in many respects. They are heavily populated. They have very small land holding people as far as agriculture is concerned. And if you look at it, they are also in the tropics. So many comparisons. The same thing with Brazil that we also benchmarked. Now what I want to say here is that Indian Council of Agricultural Research has undergone its own evolution. But one thing that is certain is that they've been very consistent. And they did not suffer the kind of difficulties our own research system faced. So for that reason, when we got there, and I think the chairman and some of those who were, okay, I think it's only the chairman, I would say, but we sat down with them and asked very critical questions. And I think I would like to react to some of this because it will help us in identifying how to solve some of the problems that I have seen being mentioned. Now, as far as the powers of the council is concerned, if you want your research system to work very well, you must be very definite with the powers of the council. And what I witnessed, I was privileged to have been, let me say, in the action while we were in the ministry, and I was also privileged to be in the action when we are made a pastor outside the ministry. What I knew as a matter of fact is that ARCM was to enhance the powers of coordination. That was why we said we wanted ARCM, and that was why government approved it. But what I saw subsequently is that ARCM became powerless, weak, to the extent that we were better off being Agri Sciences Department. And that was quite unfortunate because that is 10 steps backwards. So one of the things I want to suggest is at the end of the day, we must clearly state the powers of the council. And we're not talking about powers here with respect to just doing anything, but to ensure that the council is able to provide leadership, national leadership for our research agenda. And that was why in the act they said master plan. So the intent here is that master plan, you take rice for example. What is our master plan for rice development in the country? You take it from seed. Farmers will tell you they don't have correct seed. So you have a seed development plan. Maybe there are some disease conditions. Okay? You identify all of these things. And so when you come up with a plan, NCR Badegi that has the lead mandate is expected to provide leadership. But NCR Badegi may not have all the staff to be able to carry out the research. So in that your master plan, they should be able to identify IA Zaria because they are dealing with the, what do they call it, zonal research mandate for the farming system of that zone. And then you go to root crop for the southeast, IR&T, so that out of them you can identify people who can actually solve the problem you are talking about. Now, it is not possible for each of these institutes to do that if you don't have somebody at the center providing leadership. And that is what ARCM is expected to do. So out of the national research plan for rice, for example, we should be able to tell Nigerians we are looking for 1 million metric tons of rice. And what is the seed requirement? All of these things will be worked out because it goes back to leadership. So ARCM will ensure that the minister can come up and say, yes, for this year, guarantee we are going to produce this. It is because we are not having this centrally planned and locally managed system, which is what we proposed. So I think it's a very important component that we need to look at. Now the second one is, which Prof was talking about, I think I will skip that review of progress and performance of the constituent units. You cannot be having research institutes that are supervising and you don't even know what they do as an agenda. So how do you hold them to account? How do you give progress report to your own superiors? So I think there is a missing gap there, and that has to be taken care of. Then the powers of the executive secretary is being made obscure. When we went to India, what what they told us was they operated a system that I think is perfect, because the Director General of ICA, he's sitting as a director in the ministry. I don't know how they did that, but that's exactly their structure. Which means he has capacity to link up with what is happening within the policy environment. At the same time, when he comes out to his own technical environment where he gives that, he's able to provide linkage. And I think that is missing in our own case. Because when we left our Static Science Department, more or less it's like the other technical department just saying, you should just go. We don't want to see you again. They don't call us for meeting. And so the council was left in the dark. And I think it was because of that that we created a gap where some officers, and I want to say this, Honorable Minister, a number of officers were taking advantage of this gap and issuing out directives even without the knowledge of the council. And that is one of the things that created so many problems for us. And I remember some people even go and get letters approving certain things for them, which is creating problems in the system. So that is one point we saw in that visit. Now, the most important one, we talked about recruitment of staff. We've turned the research institutes and colleges into recruitment centers. And usually we give them just anybody. And I think Prof was even being economical when he said the ratio is 1 to 7. It's not 1 to 7. The researcher to support staff ratio in Nigeria is nothing less than 1 to 30. It varies from one institute to the other, but on the average, it's nothing less than 1 to 30. And so that's why you go to a research institute, the researcher wants to work, but of course, the admin officers who are hanging on are not allowing him to work. And we are wasting so much money on that, rather than spending much money on our research work. Now, I also recalled, we did an analysis. Usually in the research institute, the funding is supposed to be along research, extension research, training, admin, and others. And I recall vividly, when we did this study of the budget of the research institute over 10 years, I think, Prof, you remember we did that study, where we had to take each of the cost centers and categorize it. What we came up was 10% or less, not more, was what they were getting for research. That's when you take everything together. Extension was 5%. Training was just 2%. And then admin was taking 75%, while others was taking 10%. And why this is significant is that your cost center ought to be the other way around. Your cost center ought to be the other way around. And I think the examples of Mbrapa and the like that he has given, that's exactly what they told us. We know the nature of research. If you start a research work now, and if it's to run for 2 years, if you don't take it to the end and you break, that research is no longer tenable. You have to start all over again. And we have so many of these situations in this country. And I will come to the other point also when we come to our budgeting. Because whatever we are doing here, we must look at the budgeting. And I'm happy we are saying we should look at it from the budget office. For research, one of the, I think, budget line that we used to have was research experimental cost. That was removed by the budget office. The research experimental cost is to enable you, for those of them who are having animals, for example, will the animal wait for procurement before they feed? If you are having an experiment where you are having maybe an infective agent that you are checking in the lab, and you are supposed to feed it with certain broth or certain solutions or certain things, will it wait for procurement? It will get wasted. So I think the research experimental cost was designed to take care of more or less like their overhead cost, such that they are able to actually meet up to their demand in research. Now, what we are proposing, program development or admin, and the program cost is where they go to farm, for example, for trial. That's program cost, because you can only see the field. But development will be when they are buying laboratory equipment. As we speak today, none of our laboratories in the research institute has ISO certification. No. So who will take you serious? Now, the other aspect I would like to quickly talk about is the aspect the minister was talking about, the colleges. The history of the colleges is such that they were seen as the training arm of the institutes. And the purpose, the philosophy, was that we develop technology. So before we take it out, we have people who are under training. We should use this technology to train them with it. That way, when they leave, after they finish their training, they automatically take this technology and help us disseminate it. Because if you feel the technology is good, then you should have people who are your ambassadors on it. That was why the linkage between the colleges and the institute is strong. And I would say that this is something novel, because I remember as of 1994-95, the Overseas Development Agency, ODA, they came to Nigeria to study that model. In 2004, as part of the South Africa-Nigeria Binational Commission, of which at that time I was the desk officer, they also were interested in our middle-level manpower training. Because Nigeria is the only country that has this very unique middle-level manpower training in agriculture. And the reasons are not far-fetched. You need that level, because for you to even do effective research, you need technologists and technicians who will help you in the field and also in the laboratory. So this is why we thought, if you separate them, the tendency is that they will be doing something else. But when they are together, they will be aligned to the development trajectory of the research system and invariably development trajectory of the ministry, as the agricultural sector. Now, in conclusion, that something should be done. Honorable Minister, you are a politician, I'm a politician. We are all politicians here. For me, I would love all the institutes and colleges to have us, so that you can give me 3-4 nominations, and of course, I will put them there and be happy. But the issues at stake, Honorable Minister, distinguished colleagues, goes beyond that. We must help this country. A situation where we have somebody who was appointed as a board member carry a coastal bus loaded with 18 people to the Research Institute premises with drummers, because he's been appointed a board chairman of a research institute. Obviously, he's not there to help the research institute to help us achieve what we want. At the end of the day, you see them fighting with the chief executive. You must look for money where there is no money. And that is also aiding corruption. So for me, this is a very serious matter, and I think even in deliberating it in the last assembly, we agreed that this is a major problem. I'll give you another example. A board chairman will come and tell you he needs an office. He needs a car. And we look at it. To call a board meeting, if you follow the extant regulation, there is this circular relationship between parastatals, ministries, and governing boards issued by the Office of the Head of Service. It's been a circular long-standing. The allowance that is due for them is there. There was a board chairman. When his director brought it and said, this is what should guide this, he just flipped it at him. So this is the challenge. And that is why I remember also, 2006, before the ARCM took off, there was a presidential committee on improving relationship between research and production. And the Agri-Sciences Department then was the secretariat, and I played a major role. Now, the committee that was set up to look at governance was headed by the Deputy Governor of Rivers State at that time, one Dr. Toby. And when we looked at it, given all the facts, they agreed that research system does not constitute the place where you put too much politics, because it's technical. So for that reason, this issue has come upon me, and I want us to look at it again. What we are trying to replace at the research institute to take care of the body we were talking about is that the IPA, they have what they call management committees. They also have research advisory committee, and then they also have Research Management Committee. The Research Advisory Committee is what serves like the board, because it's advisory. But this time around, it's populated by technical people who have the know-how to help the research institute to achieve the technical objectives. While the board is just to give centralized policy guidelines. And when they do, the research institutes go back and bury themselves in their laboratories and their field, and all they need is to report back. So that at the end, we are able to say, yes, our research is helping to support development as we see it.
The development of Nigeria, you understand the importance of biotechnology, national development, approved the National Biotech Policy on the 23rd of April 2001, which subsequently led to the establishment of the National Biotech Development Agency in November 2001. In implementing the National Biotech Policy, NABA was established under the aegis of the Department of Science and Tech to carry out a well-focused research on the development of biotechnology in both areas of food, agriculture, health, industry, environment, and other strategic sectors for national development, and draw programs and policies for biotech utilization, research and development in the country. Also, NABDA is to promote, coordinate and deploy cutting-edge biotechnology research and development activities in Nigeria. Based on this premise, Mr. Chairman, the programs of NABDA are structured in line with international standards, bearing in mind the development of local technological content. It might also interest you to know that NABDA bill, which has been passed in National Assembly 2019, with recommendation by both the parties, was sent to Mr. President for assent. So unfortunately, the NABDA bill was sent back to Mr. President for failure to include the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Development. Apparently, an innocent omission by the draftsman, and assuming the fact that the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Development already had a representative on the governing board of NABDA. Nevertheless, the NABDA bill is currently being corrected to include the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Development. The application of modern biotech in agriculture over the years cannot be overemphasized, especially in the attainment of food security. Modern biotech have made possible what was impossible for the traditional methods to achieve by use of new techniques. These have become realizable in Nigeria by recent approval of genetically modified crops. Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the Senate, you recall that our beauty cotton, which was developed in partnership with IAR, yield between 4.2 to 4.5 tons per hectare, and that this technology has virtually revolutionized agriculture and then textile production in this country. The National Center for Agricultural Mechanization, the National Center for Genetic Resources and Biotechnology, the Federal College of Cooperatives, and the Federal College of Land Resources Technology, respectively operational under the Departments of Cooperatives and Agricultural Land Resources of the Ministry, shall be deemed to be established under this Act. Now, by the above quotation, provisions of Amendment Bill Section 20 or Studia is seeking to include National Center for Genetic, that is NAGRA, a center presently under the supervision of NAGRA, as one of Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria established centers in contravention of let-down procedure and failure to comply with conditions precedent. Now, the National Center for Genetic Resources and Biotech was originally set up in 1987 by the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology and was later subsumed under NAFDA in 2007 as a specialized center supervised by NAFDA. Now, at present, NAFDA is one of the specialized centers of NAFDA with functions and mandates to complement the research activities carried out by NAFDA and municipal research development centers, projects located in all the geopolitical zones of this country.
I can see that because a lot of emphasis now is being placed on the structure. And I think it's important that people understand why this bill is, because we don't lose the essence of it. The structure, whether you're the board or this, I think the essence of what we're trying to do is to put in place a good foundation that will be able to meet the challenging needs of the future. The other one that I just wanted to make a comment about, although we'll do more research on it, is the issue of the biotechnology, something under the Federal Ministry of Science. I seem to have a separate view of that. I really think they should be under the Agri Council. I mean, that's my own personal view, because I believe a lot of what they do to do with this genetically altered thing, and it all has to do with agri. I mean, the Federal Ministry of Science and Tech has to do with more of the. So I think there's a misplacement there, and I think really they should be under the agri to monitor that. That's some of the things and definitely I'm sure when we come back with the final bill, we'll have a better position. Thank you.
We have to be honest and straightforward to ourselves, especially by the political leaders, because the political will is very fundamental in this regard. So many things have been said about the funding, about all this and that, but really the critical issue is the political will to do what we say we are going to do about research and research institutions. It's absolutely necessary. When I came as a minister, I had discussions with all the research institutes, professors, doctors in this research institute. And after all the deliberation, I asked them, what's the impact? And everybody kept quiet and started scratching his head. I said, well, what's the impact? Take NAFRI. NAFRI was established in 1922. Take BOM in Jos. Was established around 1958 or thereabout, and is a referral center for the Central African countries as well as for the West African sub-region. Very, very important research institute. But what are the conditions today? So this issue has to be taken, and we must have the political will to understand what research means and why we need this research. You can't move forward, especially in the agricultural sector, without research. All the countries that you have mentioned, that was the anchor of the development in the agricultural sector, research. Secondly, I think there are structural deficiencies in all the research institutions, inter and intra-structural deficiencies. Inter within the research institutions themselves, which we have mentioned, and intra between one research institute and another. You have a research institute for marine water or whatever it is, and you have another one for fresh water fisheries, and you have another one for that. Duplication of research institutes, and you have the feeling that some of these were established just to create jobs for the boys, but not for the research. So we have to look at these structural differences, and whatever bill we are going to come out should address this fundamental issue. My feeling is that these research institutions, if they are going to be effective, they have to be rationalized and really repositioned to do what they are asked to do. The issue of funding, just small minor corrections. We will not provide funds for the research institute as a ministry. They go and defend their budget, is done between them and the budget office. But let me tell you, who cares about the research? Just take a simple example. You are paying a professor about 500,000 naira per annum. He doesn't have 200,000 naira for research. How do you go forward in this direction? How? So that aspect of funding will go along with rationalization of the research institute, with a correction of these structural differences in these research institutes. Absolutely. Then there is the issue of motivation. Really, even self-motivation. In some universities and in some research institutes, I have supported few individuals, self-motivated individuals that do research and even recognize internationally and go into international competition, and they win and they make impact. But then we give them little motivation within the country. So we have to look at that aspect. The other thing I would like to, I have taken the comments, especially the two people here, which I believe they know very well about this. Mr. Abubakar is in my think tank. Unfortunately, this COVID prevented us from accomplishing the result, but I think we are going to rejuvenate and reach to the conclusion that we want to reach in that regard. But I will suggest to the chairman of this committee that we need to have a technical committee between the Senate Committee on Agriculture, the Ministry of Agriculture, and some research institute. So I think if that is done, we can be able to help to work on the same page and on the same platform to take all this into account before the finalization of this important bill. Research is very important. If we don't do it, we cannot move forward, especially in the agricultural sector. Then there is an interministerial conflict, which I have noticed now when we are talking about the Ministry of Science and Technology. Even between the two ministries ourselves, we need to sit down and sort out and screen out all the overlapping that's surrounding us and making us ineffective in our research effort. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to having to you to agree to having this technical committee where we will discuss all these things and put them on the same page before we finalize this important bill.
It is with gratitude to Almighty Allah that I want to thank you for finding time to be with us. We have listened to all the interventions that were made, from the presentations of the Honourable Minister to that of Professor Abubakar, to that of our colleague, Dr. Sabi, Senator Dr. Sabi, the Executive Secretary of the Research Council, and other very, very critical presentations that were made by individuals here. And I'm sure I'm speaking for my colleagues, I'm very, very satisfied with the richness of material that were presented in the course of the various interventions at this public hearing on the subject matter of research in agriculture. We have a time frame within which to do justice to the three bills. Because the three bills are fundamental for the survival or the promotion of our agricultural pursuits as a country. We therefore do not want to lose the momentum that our efforts have gathered this far. And in order not to lose that momentum, we have to act with dispatch. But in acting with dispatch, we do not want to lose the substance, the basic ingredients of these submissions. So that at the end of the day, we come up with an acceptable position that will surely take us to the promised land. So, for the Research Council on this act for today that we are considering, we are going to have an ad hoc committee of 5 that will help the Senate develop its report. Our tradition is after a public hearing like this, we have to submit a report to plenary. And that report should be the embodiment of the deliberations that we have. I am therefore proposing that we have a committee of 5 ad hoc. After we're done with the report, that will be it. If I'm willing to get back to them, if we want their attention as individuals, we will not hesitate to do so. We want to have Professor Baba Yusuf Abubakar. We want to have the Executive Secretary of ARCN, Professor Sharubutu. We will have our colleagues, Senator Dr. Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi. We are going to have distinguished Senator Tolu Adebi, and the Ministry of Agricultural Development will nominate one person, one of its own, to join this program we have, total of 5. With this comment, I want to call on the Vice Chairman of the Senate Committee on Agriculture to give a bit of thanks.
I would like to thank each and every one of you for being present today, for your contributions, for your deliberations, for your presentations. I thank you most sincerely for your contributions. I want to also wish you safe journey back to your offices, those from other towns, back to your towns, back to your homes. I wish you well, and just as the chairman said, we will look very seriously into your contributions.
This is where we end this edition of the program from the National Assembly. I'm Ignatius Nkwo. Enjoy the rest of your day.